Here's a fly ball out towards center field. This one's going back, and this one is gone! Taylor gets this one out towards center field to the short porch, and it's a grand slam! That's a floater, out to short. And it's booted off the shortstop's glove! Just like we drew it from Hollywood. Caladros, the 3-2. Swing and a miss! And the Audubon Green Wave have upset the Kingsway Dragons! Grant Fournier, two-run shot to right. We are here at DWB Studios, as I like to call it unofficially, for our first ever DWB Baseball Selection Show. I'm Dan Wilkins. Jake Clark is to my left this evening. It is a beautiful time of year. I know basketball is over, but as many of you know, I cannot wait to get excited for baseball season. We have 42 games across 9 counties from March 24th all the way to May 22nd. And Jake, as a former baseball player yourself, we've covered your team a couple of times, and I think you know already this is my favorite sport to cover throughout the entire year. It's just such a joy to be doing this tonight.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and it's great that I'm able to cover it this year. I've been playing my whole life, and now I finally get to be on the media side of things. And the weather's starting to get warmer, and that's how you know it's really baseball season. I'm super excited for this show and for what the season has to offer.
I mean, that groundhog didn't lie. He said 6 more weeks of winter, and exactly 6 weeks later, we got 70 degrees. So, you know, I cannot complain. Punxsutawney Phil, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Without further ado, I think if you all know the basketball show, where we went wrong on that, we were talking for minutes on end. I don't think we should waste too much time here this evening. Let's start off with our first game of the year. March 24th. Yes, March 24th. It is the earliest start to a South Jersey baseball season in decades, because this year the NJSIAA made a rule change that scrimmages and games can kind of be intertwined a little bit. There are teams starting as early as March 17th, and the earliest South Jersey team to start is not Bishop Eustace, Cherry Hill East and Delran. They're playing on March 19th, I believe. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. But for us personally, our first game of the year is going to be a clash between a Cape Atlantic and a Tri-County foe over in the Alcyon Woods, because that is the Millville Thunderbolts and the Pittman Panthers. Now, Pittman it's been a little while since they've been back to back to the sectional finals. They lost in the semifinals 2 years in a row. Lost in South Jersey Group 1, and of course that kind of paved the way for Gloucester to get their first sectional championship in 50 years. But the thing about Millville is that they have such a storied history, of course, with a guy that graduated from their high school 15 years ago, Mike Trout. He has that tradition where he, instead of retiring the number 1 jersey, he gives it to the captain of the team for every year. Now, last year it was Sergio Duraz who had it. He graduated last year, but these two teams have scrimmaged each other for the past 2 or 3 years, and now they get to finally play each other for a points-paying game.
Yeah, and I mean, when you talk about Pittman, they're a team that they had 20 wins last year. That's by no means a season to not be proud of. That's a fantastic season. They lost in the semifinals in Group 1 South, as you mentioned, but they got a guy in Hudson Rue who's a fantastic player, a .317 batting average, .402 slugging percentage, had 19 RBIs last year as a junior, and also on the mound, one of their best pitchers that they're bringing back, a 1.70 ERA, 29 strikeouts in 33 innings pitched last year for Pittman. He can do it on the mound, he can do it at the plate, and with him leading the charge, they'll be looking to compete in Group 1.
That's the thing about a Group 1 school like Pittman, is that you have to be versatile. You have to be not exactly a two-way player, but wherever you're penciled in for Monday may not be where you're penciled in for Tuesday. They've got Nick Watson, the transfer from St. Augustine, who came over as a shortstop and also as a pitcher, and now is finding his own right with the Panthers. And as he said, 20-7 last year, atop the Tri-County Classic Division. Should be really fun to see them for a couple of games this year. Let's listen to a quick interview snippet from Pittman head coach John Hopley on this change of making the schedule a little bit wider and making it a little bit easier for them to schedule games in the early season.
One more question for you, John. As we go into the 2025 season with you guys having the opening day slot, you're starting earlier than almost anybody in the state most people in the state with a March 24th opening day. The NJSIAA doing the same thing that basketball did this year, where scrimmages and regular games can kind of intertwine. Some teams are starting a week after. Some teams are starting as soon as March 19th. I think the Toms River North and South, they're playing on as early as the 19th. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. How do you feel about it? Do you feel that, well, first of all, the season started like 3 days ago, and now you're going to be having your opening day in 11 days instead of the usual like 20-ish days that you get for spring training. So what's your opinion on that, and how do you feel about the rule change?
I like that they opened it up for us because we have senior trip is a full week that we don't play any baseball. And here at Pittman, we have a prom weekend of 3 days where they can't. Actually, it's 4 days. It's a Thursday night prom, so there's no athletics going on during that week. So that takes away 11 days out of our season. So that to be able to tack it on in the beginning helps. However, like you said, we got 11 days till game one. I feel like as a coach, I'm rushed to get these guys prepared. Now, again, we're very veteran heavy, so those guys are already like getting ramped up, getting used to it, and ready to go on day one. But for us this year, I think it's a good thing. Going forward, it may not be so. So I like it that it's an option for coaches. So they're I believe Pennsville opens up April 2nd against us, and we'll already have 4 games under our belt. So that part I'm not so sure is fair. However, coaches have a decision to make.
Absolutely. I mean, we didn't start our basketball season this winter until December 18th, and there were some teams that were playing as early as the 9th. So I think as long as everybody gets in their fair share of games, I think it'll be good. It becomes unfair when teams are playing a demonstrably higher amount of games than everybody else. I think that some of the teams that are going, like Egg Harbor is going down to Ripken in the spring. Their CCTS is going down to Orlando early in the spring, not during the high school spring break, but during like that week in early March. It'll be interesting to see how that works out because there's going to be some teams, as you said, you guys are going to have 4 games under your belt when Pennsville opens their season on April 2nd, which will be interesting to see. One team that has a little bit under their belt has some power points to their name, and teams that don't. So, John, thank you very much.
Great snippet there from John Hopley. Had the pleasure of speaking to him yesterday. Our next game is going to be in the other direction from Pittman. It's going to be Maple Shade and Bordentown on March 26th at the Bordentown Turf up there in the north of Burlington County. I like what Bordentown has to offer. It's a hitter-friendly ballpark, only 350 feet to center, along with the turf that they have there. They did lose some big players last year, but they still have Andrew Forster. But what I like about Bordentown is that they are a very well-rounded team. They have a young head coach over there, and I think that what they have to offer, first of all, they made it to the Group 2 Central semifinals last year with the rematch of Seneca and Haddon Heights in Central. I'm sorry, that would be South Group 2. I apologize. But either way, Group 2 Central, that is going to be a good group this year. And Bordentown playing a team like Maple Shade that can sometimes be a little bit ambiguous, can be a little bit of a question mark. Definitely will be interesting to see Bordentown this year.
Well, I mean, Maple Shade's a team that last year they struggled a little bit. They went 9-14. They were also under 500 in their division, 3-5 in the BCSL Patriot. But they were a very young team last year, Dan, and that's always something that is a bit of a question mark. Are those players going to progress and get better over the offseason, or are they going to stay the same and kind of have the same year that they had last year? So an early game for Bordentown and for Maple Shade to kind of figure out what this season's going to look like for both of those squads.
Absolutely, and Maple Shade with Michael Webb at the helm, he has a lot of South Jersey roots and has a lot of connections down there. I like Preston Carey on that team. I think that they could make a good underrated run, but we'll have to see, and March 26th will be an early test.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when you look at Maple Shade, Connor Stratton's a guy that really just kind of stands out to me. He'll be a senior this year, hit 300 for the Wildcats last year, and also had a 1.86 ERA for them. Another guy that can do it on the mound and in the batter's box for Maple Shade.
And then next on our list is going to be another Tri-County clash between a Tri-County team and a Cape Atlantic team, except these two are a little bit closer together. It's the Vineland Fighting Clan and the Cumberland Colts on March 27th. It'll be our first of 3 games covering the Colts this year. Colts went 9-14 with Kyle Daddario at the head coach. position last year. Another hitter-friendly ballpark, tall fences but short dimensions. And I like the way that Cumberland runs their franchise. They're very mild-mannered. They don't seem that intimidating at first, but then you see them, and they can definitely be a sleeper in the Tri-County Liberty, especially with Delsey losing a decent amount of seniors. I think Delsey is still the favorite to win that division, but with guys like Highland and Triton and Deptford as well, Cumberland could fit in as like a nice second-place finish or a tie for second or third. It doesn't matter, but I think that it's going to be Delsey, and then everybody else is going to kind of be scrambling for that position. It'll be interesting to see them this year.
And then on the other side of things, Vineland finished under 500, 11-14, 4-8 in the Cape Atlantic American. They were a first-round exit in Group 4 South, and they're a team, they lost a couple seniors last year, but I feel like the core is kind of returning, and they're going to look to try and put some of the pieces together to try and make a deeper run in that Group 4 South division. And Kyle Lamatier, he's going to be a junior this year. He's one of the bright spots for them, a 367 batting average with a 494 slugging percentage for the Vineland Fighting Clan. He's somebody you're gonna want to keep your eye on.
And both of these teams, under 500, both first-round losses last year in their respective playoffs. But Group 4 and Group 3, sometimes they can be interchangeable. They're all big schools. They have a lot of potential, and I think that D'Addario could make an early impact for this crew going in the next season. We do have another Salem County team that's going to be included in this next game, along with a fellow Gloucester County Colonial Conference team, in fact. Another team that's going to be looking to get a little bit further ahead this year, and another team that's looking to pick up where it left off. It's the Woodstown Wolverines and the Gateway Gators. This is a matchup that originally has been a scrimmage for the past few years, but with the addition of the new rule, that opened up the possibility for them to get more practice and more points-paying games this year. Gateway has a couple of DWB guys on it. Ryan Sieber, Matt Steedle, Billy McCauley. They've all made contributions to DWB in the past. And Woodstown, of course, reached the sectional final for the second time in 3 years in 2024. They made it in 2022, and then they went all the way, and then they lost to Gloucester on a walk-off sac fly last June. I like what Woodstown has to offer. They still have Rocco String, who is one of the best power bats I've seen in South Jersey in my time covering them. They also have a lot of good sneaky pitching, pitching that when you're just watching them throw bullpens, it might not look like it, but as I said with Maple Shade, they can definitely be a little bit under the radar on the pitching side, but a big loss for them this year was Brent Williams. He went over to Hartford Community College, one of the best JUCOs in NJCAA. I believe they're Division I over in Connecticut, but they are an excellent crew, and Brent Williams really held down the fort at the third base spot for them.
Yeah, and then on the other side of things, Dan, Gateway had a season where they struggled a little bit, 8-16, 1-5 in the Colonial Patriot. They're going to be looking to turn things around, though, and Zach Brodsky is going to be the guy to try and do that for them. A 349 batting average, 429 slugging percentage, and he can get it done on the mound, too, with a sub-3 ERA and 33 strikeouts last year for the Gators. He's a fantastic player, somebody that's played against them before. Zach Brodsky, great player for the Gateway Gators, and they're going to be looking to try and have a bit of a better season this year, and a tough test against a team that went to the Group 1 final.
It's going to be a true test for Gateway, and I think that it'll be something that they, with a lot of the Group 1 out-of-conference schools that they're playing, they'll be playing Pittman later on this season as well. It'll be interesting to see how Gateway responds versus some of the best in Group 1. Next up, we close out the month of March with another Tri-County Royal matchup. This time it's going to be the Williamstown Braves and the Clearview Pioneers. It's the first of two games for Williamstown. And funny enough, the first time Williamstown High School has ever been covered on DWB. We've covered some of them with ball hockey, but not for any other high school sport. Williamstown is actually the only team on this entire list of 42 games that missed the playoffs in the Group 4 South Division last year, but it's a byproduct of the fact that they are in one of the toughest divisions in South Jersey, the Tri-County Royal. They had Clearview, who went to the semis in a bit of an upset. They were the 6th seed last year, and they have GCIT. They have, more importantly, Gloucester Catholic and Kingsway, the two-headed monster that's over there in the Tri-County Royal. Williamstown is going to have to try to keep up, but they do have the pieces to do it.
Yeah, and they were a young team last year. A lot of freshmen and a lot of sophomores got varsity time. And it's kind of growing pains when you have a team like that. They won 6 games last year, but those guys, they got the varsity experience, whereas some of these bigger schools, your freshmen and sophomores are playing on JV or even the freshman team. These guys are getting varsity experience right away, so they know what it's going to have to take to try and make the playoffs this year and make a bit of a deeper run. And then on the other side of this matchup, Clearview went 15-11-1 last year. They're a pretty good team. They went 5-5 and even split in the Tri-County Royal. And they're a team, they had a semifinal loss in Group 4 South, but they're looking to compete every year. They usually have a pretty good team put together, and they're going to be looking to do some damage and make some noise in that Group 4 South bracket.
Yeah, and that'll be it for the month of March. We've got 5 games in the month of March. Normally, I wouldn't think about doing games in March, but when the news broke to me, I think it was back in, because I had opening day, that as my opening day back in December or January, and I'm looking at it, and I'm just like, well, why are people scheduling games this early? Well, that's why, because of the rule change. Let's take a look at that month of March calendar. As you see there, we start on Monday, March 24th versus Millville and Pittman, a nice little Tri-County Cape Atlantic clash, and then Mapleshade and Bordentown, Vineland and Cumberland, Woodstown and Gateway, and Williamstown and Clearview. We're going to take a quick break here at the Dan Wilkins Broadcasting Selection Show, and we'll be back in just a moment. In life, the road ahead is full of possibilities, but to navigate it safely, you need the right skills. Harper Driving School is the premier driving school serving Gloucester, Salem, and Camden counties. With experienced instructors, many of whom are teachers in local schools, we are dedicated to your success and will help you master the road with confidence. With an over 95% success rate of students passing their road test on their first try, you know your student will be in good hands while embarking on a huge step of their young adult lives, all while avoiding the lines at the DMV and getting insurance discounts.
We chose Harper, and so should you.
Welcome back here on the Dan Wilkins Broadcasting Selection Show. I'm Dan Wilkins with Jake Clark to my left. The month of March is done, and we will be now moving into probably our most intense month of the season, and actually our only full month of the season, April, because May will have the regular season end in I think it's the third week, and then March is going to start us off late. So we're going to be staying local for our first game of April, a nice little Colonial Conference matchup between a very underrated team in the Collingswood Panthers and the Haddon Township Hawks. I think for a lot of my Colonial Conference friends, this is going to be a good matchup to see who's got what it takes. With Collingswood getting bumped up a division this year, this will actually not be a divisional matchup. They'll be in the top dog with Audubon, Haddon Heights, Haddonfield this year. After there was a quick change, they made a quick swap, and now Paulsboro got moved back down another division. But Collingswood's probably one of the most underrated teams in South Jersey. They have Brad Klein, who's a very smart head coach, along with Miles DeVincentis, who, as you have listed on this paper, probably one of the best two-way players in South Jersey.
Yeah, DeVincentis, 377 batting average last year for the Panthers, 507 slugging percentage, and about 70 at-bats, and then a 2.21 ERA with 59 strikeouts and 44 1/3 innings pitched. Those are fantastic numbers. And Collingswood, a team that went 16-10 last year, they're a good ball club, and they're a good baseball team that competes not only defensively, but their bats bring a lot of noise as well. And on the other side of things, Haddon Township is not an opponent to make light of. 10-15 last year. They compete very hard in the Colonial Conference, and they give that division, even though it's the bottom one, a run for its money about every single year.
Absolutely, and you have Kirby Rice, who's going to be making a big impact. They lost their first baseman, their power-hitting first baseman, Nick Burns, last year, but they still have Eamon Sheehan in the middle infield. I think he's a great defensive piece for them, and I believe they also have Tyler Johnston entering his senior year. Teams or players that individually might not break the stat sheet, but they're going to give you the good at-bats. They're going to give you those quality ABs and find a way to get themselves wins. I mean, 3-3 in Colonial Patriot, 10-5, 10-15 overall. Didn't play a lot of games, or I should say they did play a lot of games outside of their division, and they found a way to keep themselves diverse and afloat, basically. Now we're going to be kind of shifting directions here in a complete 180, because we're going to go from a Group 1 matchup to maybe the aforementioned two-headed monster. It's Gloucester Catholic and Kingsway, April 2nd. I mean, you just don't get too much better than this. 27-2 for Gloucester Catholic, 17-9 for Kingsway. The last time these two teams played, we covered it in May of last year. 2-1 walk-off for Gloucester Catholic on, like, I think it was a walk-off hit by pitch, something like that. Um, these guys are both dogs, just incredible teams that are refueled with the fire of 1,000 suns every year, and everybody knows how good Gloucester Catholic is. They're ranked 25th nationally, actually, at this moment, and number 1 in the Mid-Atlantic region via perfect game. So it will be very exciting to see these two.
Yeah, Gloucester Catholic is a team that year in and year out is a powerhouse program. They're a fantastic baseball team, 27-2. They were the entire group champs, state champs for non-public B in the private region. They're just a team that they go out, they compete, and they win a perfect 10-0 in the Tri-County Royal. But on the other side of things for Kingsway, 17-9, 6-4 in the Tri-County Royal, and they were quarterfinal loss in Group 4 South. For a team as good as Kingsway that looks to compete year in and year out, you have to think that they're going to have a little bit more fire and pep in their step, trying to make a deeper playoff run in Group 4 South.
Not only that, but you also have a very deep team with Kingsway. You've got Dylan Rickards at first base, who's a very underrated player. He's committed to Wilmington. You also have Killian McCaffrey, the right-hander. Not to mention the fact that these guys also have, first of all, Gloucester Catholic, I mean, the amount of Division I commits that they have is absurd. Jack Mastero could very well be going Division I. His brother is going Division I to Monmouth. You've got Braden Lipoff committed to East Carolina. Noah Danza committed to Virginia. It's just year in and year out. These guys are so good. I think they won their 21st state championship this past year over, I think it was St. Augustine. No, it wasn't St. Augustine, but it was somebody else. But they won their 21st, and then what did they tweet the next day? They said, we're one day closer to number 22. These guys have the confidence, and considering how funky of a field they play on, they're going to be going to Kingsway, which is a very formulated kind of standard field, and I think they'll be hitting very well there. Next up, after a day off, yes, we do take days off here at DWB. The first Thursday in April is going to be a nice matchup in the Olympic, and it's a matchup we saw right around this time last year. It's the Cherokee Chiefs and the Lenape Indians. Now, the last time we saw these two, it was a 9-inning game where Cherokee won. It was 7-3. They put up 4 runs in the top of the 9th, and Lenape couldn't answer. But Andrew Shank had a 2-run single with 2 strikes and 2 outs to tie the game. These two teams, despite being in the same school district, these guys are some of the best rivals in South Jersey. They bring some of the most entertaining games to the table, and with Cherokee having such a young, talented team, it's going to be exciting as heck to watch them next year.
And, I mean, you talk about young talent. Cooper Birdie is the first name that comes to mind. As a freshman last year, hit .353, slugged for .529, had 11 RBIs in 68 at-bats, and then on the mound had a sub-3 ERA with 20 strikeouts and 13 innings pitched. As a freshman at the varsity level, he's entering his sophomore year. And then for Lenape, they went 14-11 last year, and they'll be bringing back Michael Kahn, who will be a senior this year, a .290 batting average. He had 20 hits, 14 RBIs, and then on the mound, a sub-1 ERA at 0.61 with 12 strikeouts and 13 and 2/3 innings pitched. This is a matchup it has the drama around it being a rivalry game and the talent out on the diamond that you're not going to want to miss.
And Lenape, they are the kind of team that, first of all, they had that big Diamond Classic upset. They beat Mainland last year. The thing about Cherokee, though, they've got those 2 lefties, not just Cooper Birdie, but they've also got Henry Radbill, the senior lefty committed to Rutgers. Birdie, nationally ranked as a left-hander. I'm not 100% on where he's committed, but I don't even know if he's committed yet at all, but he is incredible to watch. And not only that, they also have Brett Chiesa at third base who's coming back. They have some very, very strong young talent, and if Cherokee's going to make a big step towards the state final this year, this is going to be the year, and I think that they'll do very well in this one. Next up on the list is going to be the tournament that some of my hometown friends seem to enjoy. This will be our 4th year covering the Ralph Shaw tournament. The first Saturday in April, it's a tournament that now includes a new member, Camden Catholic. For the past 3 years that we've covered this tournament, in 22, 23, and 24, we've had Bishop Eustace, Kingsway, and Audubon. Now, of course, Audubon's the host, and they won last in 2023, but Kingsway has won 3 of the last 4. They won in 21, 22, and 24, and did so in their last 2 over Audubon both times. It's been a very fun tournament to watch, and especially as somebody who's grown up in this town since I was 6 months old. This is where we're filming this right now. I love Audubon and I love going back there, and this is one of the best places, one of the best times to be there. It's a baseball school, 8 state titles. Rich Horan had his 600th win last year, became one of 5 head coaches in South Jersey history to win 600 games. It's a great place to be. Great burgers, great hot dogs, cooked up by Mr. Stockland. They do an excellent job over there, and Cinnaminson was in the tournament the last 2 years. Didn't do the result that they wanted, and with a coaching change came a team change, and now Camden Catholic's in this tournament.
And I mean, for Camden Catholic, a team that finished under 500 last year with a 10-14 record, but they were 7-3 in the Olympic Nationals, so above 500 in their division. And they were, however, a first-round exit in the non-public A South Jersey bracket. They got to be looking for a deeper run, especially they're bringing back a lot of their core with a lot of the guys they have a lot of juniors and seniors on this roster. And then flipping the page over to Audubon, I think you said enough. A baseball school, 19-10 record last year, and a guy to really highlight for them is Nick Caligiros, who had a sub-1.
Sorry to interrupt you.
My apologies.
I grew up in this town.
All I know is he's got a sub-1 ERA, and being in the batter's box against that guy, he is a fantastic off-speed pitch that I can't even tell you what it is. But he is one of the better players on that Audubon team and is going to be one of the bright spots for the Green Wave this year.
Well, not to mention they also have Trent Bannell, who has been his backstop partner. He's the guy that probably has ticked off the most players in South Jersey history with his pep in his step. I don't know what he takes in the morning. I don't know if he eats pancakes filled with whatever, but it's incredible to watch. Does he get himself in trouble sometimes? Yes, but is it worth it? Absolutely. Those two are both committed to Rutgers Camden as kind of a tandem, and not to mention Tyler Wiltsey, the Rutgers commit, the main campus Rutgers commit. He has been, kind of floating back and forth between shortstop and center field. Great window for them this year to compete with a big senior class on the way. It'll be interesting to see them. Now, the other hand on this first round matchup, Bishop Eustace and Kingsway. We've talked about Kingsway before. We know what they can do. But Bishop Eustace, though, another legendary head coach, Sam Tropiano. Spent, I think it was 10, 15 years at St. Augustine. Now he spent the next 10 or 15 years at Bishop Eustace, and he is just somebody that is so good at developing players. Now, they lost Jack Kirchner 2 years ago. They lost Landon Mack this year. They still have great pitching. I really like what they have with the Mashuli brothers, who are, I believe, entering their senior year, and then also, not to mention, the sophomore outfielder, Dante Matarese, who really lit the world on fire last year.
Well, I mean, they're another powerhouse program. 21-7 last year. They lost to Gloucester Catholic in the South Jersey non-public B final, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but they're a team that year in and year out is going to compete, and Kingsway is going to have their hands full. But Kingsway is also a team that year in and year out is going to be one of the top teams in South Jersey. This one should be a great matchup here in the Ralph Shaw Classic.
Not to mention that I've been at the Ralph Shaw Classic 3 years in a row. I can tell you every single game between Bishop Eustace and Kingsway has been wild. 2 years in a row, Kingsway's won on walk-offs, once with a walk-off double, and then last year with a walk-off bunt that was set up by a game-tying double by Dylan Rickards. And I think that 3 years ago, it was still a one-run game. Wasn't a walk-off, but still 3 years in a row, these two are always slated for an amazing matchup in the first round. And Kingsway has made the finals 3 years in a row against Audubon. Audubon and Kingsway have both won their first-round games for the past 3 years in a row. And now we'll see if they do it again versus Camden Catholic, or if the Irish will make the upset and face either the Crusaders or the Dragons. It'll be very fun to watch. But 2 non-public teams and 2 public teams squaring off. It's going to be a very fun weekend over at the Hank Greenberg Field. Turning the page to week number 2 of April, we do have a matchup not in South Jersey but in Central Jersey between the Maple Shade Wildcats and the Holy Cross Lancers. It's not at Holy Cross, though. It's a little bit further up the road at the Trenton Thunder Stadium. It'll be our first of several night games this year, and it'll be our first at a minor league baseball facility. I'm waiting on confirmation on if we're going to get press box access or if Vincent is going to have to hold the laptop in his lap on the last row at a 200 level. I don't know. I haven't been to Trenton Thunder Stadium in years, but it brings back a lot of memories. It's where I met Tim Tebow back when he played for the Binghamton Rumble Ponies. But listen, Holy Cross, very underrated underrated team in South Jersey, non-public B. They've got kind of an acquaintance of yours, Zach Ford, as head coach, a Sterling alum, and they've got a lot to talk about this year, especially with Liam Nessmeyer. He's committed to Valley Forge to play baseball, and they've got a lot of underrated guys that in a crowded group, non-public field with St. Augustine, Bishop Eustace, Gloucester Catholic, and Camden Catholic as well, can kind of get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, absolutely. And a guy for Holy Cross that I really like to point out is Luke Rogers, who will be a junior this year. One of the better pitchers on that Lancers team, a 1.64 ERA last year with 28 strikeouts and about 34 innings pitched. He's fantastic on the mound as somebody that's been in the box against him, has great stuff with the fastball and the off-speed. He's a bright spot for the Lancers.
Not to mention the fact that he's a southpaw, and those southpaws can definitely be very valuable. I was doing my preseason rankings, my preseason kind of stuff to figure out, who's going to be the top 10 at each position, and I only found about 15 notable left-handed pitchers in South Jersey. You can find a whole bunch of righties here and there, but lefties are hard to come by, and I like what Luke Rogers is capable of. Moving forward, we do have our next Cumberland game, and it'll be their second of 3 this year, but it'll be right down the road from my college, in fact. It'll be at GCIT, home of the Cheetahs. That'll be an April 8th Tuesday matchup at 4 o'clock between two not exactly rivals, but two Tri-County teams that are both looking to find their way. GCIT 12-13 last year. We mentioned them as being a part of that very crowded Tri-County Royal Division, but they have Andrew Valet, the Notre Dame commit, who, first of all, it's not easy to commit to Notre Dame for any sport. The fact that he's doing it at GCIT against such great competition, not only that, he has his brother Alex as well. Rob Eppley is a great head coach over at GCIT. He's a little bit old school. He does it a certain way, and if you don't like it, you can leave. But as a Group 4, those VOTEC schools can often have a lot of problems athletically. They don't have a lot of football teams. GCIT doesn't. But ACIT baseball, CCTS, they've been decent, but they've, struggled to find their way sometimes. GCIT is starting to finally find that step, and with Valet entering his junior year, going to be very fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that really stands out to me about GCIT last year was they were 12-13, right around 500, right around the middle of the pack, but 2-8 in the Tri-County Royal. They really struggled in their division. As you mentioned, Valet, one of the better players for this Cheetahs team, but they were a first-round exit in the Group 4 South Division, and I think that they had a very young roster last year. A lot of sophomores now turned juniors. We're going to have to see how that core developed from their sophomore year to their junior year, and to think they still have another year after this one to get even better. We're going to have to see where this season takes them.
Well, the thing about GCIT is they have a very similar field to something like Haddon Heights, where it's an all-dirt infield. It can be sometimes a little bit difficult to get that grip as a pitcher, and especially for the Valet brothers, that'll be very important for them this year. I would presume that one of them might be playing in that Tuesday game. Obviously, too early to tell. But the way that I see it is that when you're talking about a field where the home pitcher is mostly getting his scouting from neutral site events or on the road, you can see where these guys excel. And GCIT's field, I'm not trying to bash it or anything, but it's not an Alcyon. It's not a Hank Greenberg. It's not a PVI. It's very different. The conditions are a little bit different, and it'll be interesting to see how they adjust. Next up is going to be a Wednesday matchup over in Camden County in the little town of Pine Hill. It's the Deptford Spartans and the Overbrook Rams, and another Tri-County crossover between the Liberty and the Diamond Division. And Deptford, going into this season, they were 7-15 last year. They definitely took maybe a step back on the hitting side. They still have Hunter Thomas out there, who did pretty well for them last year, but they also have Cole Judge, who really led the way. He batted .397, had 27 hits, 8 RBIs. I think if Deptford, they have decent pitching. If they can lock down that hitting, I think that they'll be pretty good. And then Overbrook as well, 12-11. Those guys are in a weird corner of South Jersey, kind of like Pennsville and, that Salem County corner. It's a little bit difficult because they're not where everybody else is. They're in the middle of nowhere. So I think that Overbrook, we talked with Greg Himes. We'll get up his interview clip in a minute. But I really like what Overbrook is about. And they're kind of this no-nonsense team that runs it their own way and doesn't care if you like it or not.
Well, Overbrook has a majority of their core returning, and last year they were a first-round exit. And I just think both these teams are first-round exit. And when you look back at the Deptford side, looking at the roster up and down, they have a lot of seniors this year. And I don't like to use the term all in, but it feels like they kind of have to go all in this year and try and make a deeper run in that Group 3 bracket. It's going to be interesting to see how they play out earlier in the season in early April, but both those teams are going to have to, later down the line, look to make a bit of deeper runs in the postseason.
And with Group 3 being how it is, some teams taking a step back during the offseason, it could open up that bracket for Deptford to get a little bit of a higher seed and for them to get a deeper run. Let's listen into a quick interview snippet about what these new seasons mean to them, and from Greg Himes.
One more question for you, John. As we go into and as you said before, in that last snippet, you were talking about the fact that you're playing Ocean City in the Haddon Heights Veterans Tournament, also playing Kingsway in late April. Let's see, and even in the Tri-County Conference, you're playing some of the tougher teams. Woodstown in mid-April. You've got Timber Creek. Thought I saw Delsea on here. I did not, but either way, GCIT as well. Even in the Tri-County Conference, very tough teams. And then towards the tail end of your season, you've got Hamilton in the Cape Atlantic, and then Haddon Heights, which made 2 sectional finals in the past couple of years. They lost to Seneca, but still making a sectional final is not an easy feat. So when it comes to scheduling these tougher teams, especially as a Group 1, Group 2-ish, hanging around that balance, for the Rams, when you're scheduling those out-of-conference games, what goes into that? What, kind of thought process goes into, wanting to play those better schools and then, seeing how those results play out?
There's 3 main reasons behind that all the time. One, I'm taking the advice of the guys like Bill Alvaro Jr., Bill Alvaro Sr., who was my coach at Overbrook. I just met up with him in spring training. Some of these other prolific coaches that just talk about, hey, man, you got to play better competition to get better. Totally agree with that. And I think that has shown, what it has done for us is raise the level of seriousness for our guys in the weight room, in off-season training. The second approach to that is, my career, I'm 53 and 53, and I don't care. What I know that we get to do at the end of every day is we get to go play the best teams in South Jersey. If I'm 53 and 53, if I'm 120 and whatever, and I'm playing schools that, I'm looking at a lopsided schedule, there's no pride in that, right? I'm an internal competitor myself. I have something to prove to myself. And the third approach to that is going back to what I just said previously. We're not competing in a town of Pine Hill. Right. And I got to show these guys that we're competing in a much bigger fishbowl. Right. And we're competing against these guys all over South Jersey. You want to go play college baseball? You're going to have to go compete against guys all over the country. You want to go get a high level job and work your way up? You're competing against some of the best academically, where they went to for post grad, all of those things. And by setting that type of ideology earlier, where we're just not going to be afraid of anything that's in front of us, whether it's, getting a job or trying to gain an interview or whatever that ends up being, or whatever school they want to go to, they're not afraid of it because that's what they're conditioned to do. They're conditioned to lean in. They're conditioned to compare themselves against the best. And every day, that's who we're going to play. On the baseball side, it's going to prepare us for the playoffs. Guys like Bill Alvaro Jr., Heights with Eric Newell, they're all really good friends of mine. I love playing those guys. They prepare us very well. They're coaches that I learn from on a daily basis. And that's just something as a schedule we're going to do every year. We're going to play the best that we can play. And the boys are bought into it. We don't go into games thinking like, oh, man, we're playing a 15-0 Hamilton. Yeah, we went in and we were like, how are we going to win this game? We pulled the double squeeze on TC, but we actually did it the day before against Hamilton, too. Like, we want to play loose. We want to play confident. And why not play him?
Welcome back here on Dan Wilkins Broadcasting. We've got ourselves another couple of great games going on here in mid-April. I'm Dan Wilkins with Jake Clark to my left. The first game that we'll introduce here to wrap up Week 2 in April is going to be the rematch of the South Jersey Group 1 final from last year, the Woodstown Wolverines and the Gloucester Lions. This game was one of the best that I had ever covered last year. Woodstown took the lead in the top of the 7th, and then Gloucester got it right back and won their first sectional title in 50 years with that walk-off sacrifice fly. I believe it was by Aiden Daly. it'll be a little bit different this year. Gloucester is bumped up a group, so they'll be in Group 2, which will definitely change the dynamic of their season and who they're going to play in out-of-conference tournaments. But 22-6 for Gloucester last year. Lost a decent amount of seniors. Seth McCormick, who hit 7 homers for them last year, behind the dish as one of the best catchers in South Jersey. He's gone. They do have a lot of young talent still, but they lost a lot of seniors. Jake Zierfoss, one of them. They still have Russell Medler, but somebody that, a lot of teams that could use those guys, they're not it in anymore. So we talked about Rocco String for Woodstown, but Gloucester's one of those teams that they had their window last year and they executed to perfection. Now we'll see how they rebound after losing all those seniors.
Yeah, another guy they lost is Gavin Weiner, who was one of my former teammates over the summer, about 2 years ago. But yeah, 22-8 last year. They were the Group 1 South champs, and as you mentioned, a lot of young players on this team. It's going to be interesting to see who are some of those guys that are going to step up, because there is an absence of those seniors. And we mentioned Woodstown. They lost a couple seniors from their run, but they're bringing back the core, and they're going to be in Group 1. And now if Gloucester's bumped up to Group 2, like it seems like it is, now that the Group 1 champ is no longer there to defend the title, and it's open anyone there for the taking.
Oh, I said in the offseason that I think the Group 1 championship is going to be more wide open than it really ever has been. Especially with some of these teams that are losing a lot of seniors. It's creating the perfect storm for a lot of great games this year. Moving on, we have a doubleheader on this Saturday. Not this Saturday, but on the Saturday on the calendar. April 12th, we're going to have a two-step over in Camden County for both games, just 10 minutes apart from each other. We have Cinnaminson and Sterling. Jake, it's your alma mater. First of all, Cinnaminson coming in with a new head coach, Alex Ingian, the former assistant over at Cherry Hill West. He's joining the Cinnaminson crew after the 3-year tenure of Eric Teasdale. And, of course, your alma mater, Sterling Knights, with Tad Kozanowski. There's a lot to like about both of these teams, and Cinnaminson still with Noah Harvey on the team, the Richmond commit for the shortstop position, along with his partner in crime in the middle infield, Jacob DeJoseph. Should be a good year for them.
Yeah, you can't talk about Cinnaminson without mentioning Noah Harvey, who's going to be a senior this year, a 400 batting average last year in 65 at-bats, 26 hits, 11 doubles, and 6 stolen bases for him as a junior. But for the Knights, and being somebody that was a part of that team, 9-16 doesn't really show the whole story from last year, because we competed with a lot of teams that were quite frankly better than us, and there's going to be guys, it's a lot of seniors this year, a couple juniors on varsity. There probably shouldn't be any sophomores. It's going to be a lot of guys that have had varsity time since their sophomore year. This is the last chance they've got, and you could see them, if they decide to take this season seriously and not mail it in, you could see them make some noise in Group 2. Two guys I just want to point out. Jason Camardo, who led the team, has the highest batting average of any returner. Tony Sanchez beat him out by 1 point last year, but a .324 batting average with 24 hits and 72 at-bats and double-digit steals on the base paths. And then Vaughn McVeigh is the clear ace for the Knights, a .315 ERA and 31 strikeouts and over 50 innings pitched. Again, this is a team that, I put my bias aside being a part of them last year, if they buy in and give it their all this year, they could make some noise in Group 2.
And not to mention that, but McVeigh also threw a gem in the first round of the playoffs and an upset over Oakcrest. Didn't go in maybe expecting all that much, and then they came in and they kicked him out. So both Group 2 South competitors lost in their quarterfinal rounds last year, but I think Cinnaminson, with a new head coach and a different sense of direction, might be able to make some more noise. Again, like I said, that combination in the infield of Harvey and DeJoseph going to be really fun. And then the second half of that doubleheader is going to be 10 minutes up the road over in Haddon Heights, as we've got the Pennsville Eagles and the Haddon Heights Garnets. Haddon Heights made 2 sectional finals in a row, losing to Seneca both times in South Jersey Group 2. And people don't talk enough about Seneca, but we'll be talking about them for the next week when they have a game on the schedule. But for Pennsville, this is a team, again, in that weird part of South Jersey. It's Salem County. Not a lot of scouts really remember that place too well, but they end up coming to them. Chase Birchfield, the commit to LaSalle, that program that's being revived in the 2026 season, just killed it last year. 476 average. He didn't hit a lot of homers, didn't really hit any, but he has that pop. He has the swing. He has the it factor on that team, not to mention Luke Wood. He went down with an injury last year. He's back for, I believe, his senior year. He is a insane left-handed pitcher. He hit 88 as a freshman on his fastball. I think he's up to 92, 93. Could very well go Division One. I honestly, just off the top of my head, don't know where he's committed. But again, 17-10. They were right up there with Pittman, right on their tail for the Tri-County Classic, and they'll be a threat to watch.
And I mean, you talk about Pennsville and Birchfield. Birchfield has the pop, didn't hit the home runs, but a 7.07 slugging percentage. That's fantastic. And then a sub-1 ERA and 9 innings pitched with 10 strikeouts. But on the other side of things, Haddon Heights is a team that year in and year out is going to compete for Group 2. Over 20 wins on the season for the Garnets. You talk about the field, that plays to their advantage a little bit. With the field, it's got no grass in the infield, and the sun starts coming in the later innings. As an outfielder, that made it a little tough for me. But again, they lost in the finals to Seneca, not once but twice. But the door is still open for them. They've got a lot of great players, and Kevin Clark, no relation to me, but he'll be a junior next year for the Garnets. A 341 batting average, 402 slugging percentage. He's somebody that can get it done at the dish for Haddon Heights.
Not to mention that, and you said they're always going to be competing in Group 2. They had Drew Harris, who's now at George Washington, Jake Grice, who's over at Wagner. These guys had produced Division I talent year in and year out, and the Garnets are, even if they lose a lot of seniors, they are always a team to watch. We'll be covering Pennsville, in fact, twice in the span of 3 days, because the next Monday we'll be traveling to Pennsville for a matchup in the Tri-County Classic versus the Wildwood Warriors. It'll be their first appearance on DWB. And Wildwood, 4-4 last year in their division, 17-11 overall. And again, Wildwood, weird part of South Jersey. You know, sometimes if you're down there, you might be there for a vacation. You might not be there for high school baseball. But Wildwood's a team that I think could definitely make a lot of noise, but the fact that they're in the Tri-County Conference kind of plays against them, because for all of their road games, they're traveling over an hour to go to Pennsville for a divisional game. Same thing with Pittman. They'll be going up 55. That's at least an hour. I believe they moved from the Cape Atlantic to the Tri-County in 2008. And Wildwood Catholic, who's in that same city, is in the Cape Atlantic. So it's interesting, but Wildwood is determined. They have Trevor Troiano, who's in his sophomore year. He's somebody that can make a lot of noise, and Wildwood, again, weird part of South Jersey. I'm not saying weird in a bad way. I'm just saying it's in its own little corner, and those players develop a little bit differently. And same with Pennsville. It'll be interesting to see those two philosophies from two different parts of the state clash.
And this Wildwood team lost a lot of seniors from last year that put them at that 17-11 record. And you talk about Troiano, as a freshman last year, hit 274 with a 288 slugging percentage in about 73 at-bats, 20 hits, 11 RBIs, and 19 singles for him in his freshman year. And again, with losing a lot of seniors, the coaches are going to look to him to be the guy that helps get the team moving in the right direction with some of the younger guys.
And Pennsville and Wildwood both quarterfinal losses in South Jersey Group 1. Wildwood losing to Gloucester and Pennsville losing to Pittman. And I think that Pennsville could really take a big step forward with Luke Wood coming back after an injury-riddled sophomore year. As a junior. Not to mention the fact that he hits .410 as a hitter, but he's mostly known as a pitcher. Again, 88 miles per hour as a freshman lefty. You don't get much better than that. Luke Rogers is right up there with him, but it'll be fun to see. Next up, we move over from the Tri-County Conference to the Olympic Conference. We've got the Cherry Hill West Lions and the PVI Eagles over at PVI right down the street here from DWB Studios. Cherry Hill West is an interesting team to watch. We ranked them 9th in our preseason rankings, and PVI also got somewhere, I think, in the mid-teens around that ranking as well. But Cherry Hill West lost a lot. But again, they're a team that just never stops producing good ball players. They lost John Young Jr., who recently made his collegiate debut over in Alabama, and Ryder Garino, who got some good playing time this year so far for South Carolina. So they've got a lot of good talent. Grant Fournier is coming back for his senior year. He's committed to Delaware. There's Division I talent all over this team. I think that Cherry Hill West will still be good despite their losses. And the Olympic Patriot for CH West is always going to be a tough division. It's never going to be easy. You've got your Seneca, you've got your Shawnee, you've got your Morristown. It's one of the toughest out there, and they'll be facing a very good and very developed PVI team.
Well, I mean, when you talk about Cherry Hill West, they've got the target on their back after winning the Diamond Classic and beating Gloucester Catholic last year. They're a team that people are going to have circled on their schedules. But talking about Paul VI, the team that surprisingly finished under 500 last year, 13-15. But the positive for them there is they were 8-2 in the Olympic National, so they were winning the games in their division. And a guy for them that's just an all South Jersey talent is Mason Myers, entering his junior season last year, just under 300 in the batting average, 297 batting average, with a 595 slugging percentage and 74 at bats. He had 22 hits, 20 RBIs. I mean, anything that, and double-digit stolen bases, anything you need him to do, he's able to do on the offensive end of the ball. And he's a great defensive player in the outfield. And they have their core returning, and they're a talented team. Expect them to get over that 500 mark this year and compete a little bit more in the non-public side of things.
And Mason Myers will be meeting another South Jersey talent in Caden Bodine over at Coastal Carolina next year. Next up, before an 8-day break in our South Jersey schedules, we've got another Tri-County Diamond matchup. It is the Woodstown Wolverines for their third and final appearance this year, and the Glassboro Bulldogs. Glassboro is a team that's on the up and up. They've got Gavin Dillard, who's committed to Division II champion Misericordia. I'm sorry, Division II, Division III? I apologize, Misericordia over in PA, Division III. I know they won the national championship last year. That's right, it was Tampa that won Division II. So yeah, D3 national champions. Committing to that team is not easy. People may undersell it, but Gavin Dillard's a great talent, and especially in a hitter-friendly park, he'll excel. But Glassboro went 7-15. I don't think it tells their whole story with how good that division was last year with Woodstown in it. And Anthony Korma is kind of this new school head coach. He does it a little bit differently, focuses on those different numbers that some of the older coaches don't like. But he's young, he's ready to go, and ready to bring Glassboro back to the forefront in 2025.
And I mean, they're a young team, and you talk about Dillard, he's entering his senior year, hit over 400, had a slugging percentage over 700 last year as a junior, and on the mound had a sub-2 ERA with 32 strikeouts. He's a guy that is going to right the ship for them, and whether they need a big out on the mound or a big hit in a clutch spot from the batter's box, they're going to look to Gavin Dillard to get the job done.
Absolutely. We do have an eight-day break on the way from April 16th to April 24th. It wasn't intentional. That's just how it worked out. High school spring break is right around that time, and it ends up complicating some things. But we'll take a day off to go to Seneca and PVI, at PVI, I apologize, on April 24th. As we said, Seneca is severely undersold as a program. They won back-to-back national champions, but people talk about them like it doesn't mean anything. Group 2 is kind of in that weird middle ground. The school's not too small, the school's not too big. But guess what? Seneca won back-to-back national championships. Don't undersell them. They still have Alex Argabright coming back. They still have Nate Park coming back. Trevor Admiak as well. You know, this is a team that, again, like Overbrook, like Pennsville, like Wildwood, they're in the middle of nowhere. They're in the middle of Tabernacle. You need a compass and a map to get there. It's not easy for Seneca. And I think that even 2 years ago, they finished under 500 in the regular season, won the sectional title as a 9 seed. Last year, they toughened up. They proved that they were here to stay, got the 1 seed. They had a tough first-round matchup last year versus Manchester Township. And then guess what? They went all the way again. They played Haddon Heights again, and they beat them. This team is not to be denied. It's not to be undersold. I don't care what their record is. I don't care what their divisional record is. These guys will compete.
And this is the team that ended my playing days in high school. So I can tell you from personal experience that they're legit. They're a good team, and they put together, not only they had good pitching last year, the bats were rolling for them, and we had to go through them. Being the number 1 seed, I think, did them a lot of favors. And again, Nate Park is a guy that you mentioned that they're bringing back. He hit .330 last year with a .375 slugging percentage and over 80 at bats, had 29 hits on the year. He's a guy that they're going to be looking to probably at the top of the lineup to get a lot of hits, get the offense going. But again, they're a team that they went 4-4 in the Olympic Patriot, but they're a Group 2 school, and they're competing. And last year, at least from the Sterling side of things, it felt like Group 2 was wide open, but Seneca coming in as the number 1 seed ran all the way down and ended up winning the whole thing.
They are always going to be punching up, and that's what I feel about it. Cherry Hill West is a Group 3. Morristown, Shawnee, those are all bigger schools. Those all have more, weapons at their side. Seneca is going to be that little David compared to the Goliaths, and guess what? They're winning. we have a doubleheader on Friday, April 25th, as high school is on senior break. I'm sorry, spring break for the Easter week. I know our college's spring break is right around now, but the Easter break is very late this year. So we'll be having a Friday two-step starting over in Burlington County with a matchup between the BCSL Burlington Township Falcons and the Cherokee Chiefs. This will be our first time at Cherokee this year. And it's an interesting field. It's pretty standard. You know, you've got your they do keep the grass a little bit taller out there. And the temporary fence out in the outfield. Cherokee had an interesting year last year, 16-9, had an upset loss in the Diamond Classic to Northern Burlington, who we'll talk about later. But Burlington Township is, again, a very underrated team in South Jersey. They had an undefeated record in their BCSL division, which is the toughest of the BCSL divisions, with Cinnaminson, Delran, and NBC, all four of them getting together. Not to mention that, but they also have Sean Heffernan, who is one of the best two-way players that we've seen this year. Scoreless pitching appearances, scoreless pitching season, and over 400 batting average. We were talking about him before the show. He's going to get even better as a senior.
Yeah, and I mean, they had lots of seniors last year, and I think, unfortunately, they were a first-round loss in Group 3 Central. Heffernan is going to be looking to push them deeper into the playoffs. And again, a team like Cherokee, that's a Group 4 school. They're a big school. That's going to provide a potential PowerPoint frenzy there for Burlington Township. And again, Heffernan hit 400 last year as a junior, had a 483 slugging percentage, and then in 17 innings pitched, didn't allow a single earned run. That's something that's very impressive. You know, you go 5 without giving up a run. It's something, it's whatever. But 17 innings without allowing a single run, and on top of that, 20-plus strikeouts. He's a real good two-way player there for the Burlington Township team.
Absolutely. Moving on to the second half of this doubleheader, it's going to be Gateway and Pittman. Now, we saw these two teams 2 years ago in a very similar game of this. It was the first round of the Joe Lang Classic, and that's what this game will be as well. It'll be the first time in a while Pittman is playing their first round of the Joe Lang under the lights. It'll be a 6 o'clock start over at Alcyon, and these two had a very good game 2 years ago. Jude Engstrom had a walk-off single to win the game 2-1 in 8 innings. I believe Sean Green pitched 8 in that game, which was definitely a bit of an anomaly, but Gateway, again, 8-16, Pittman 20-7. The records look far apart on paper, but I think that Gateway holds their own in this kind of predicament here versus the Group 1 powerhouses. We should talk a little bit more about Aiden Bender, the Bishop Eustace transfer, who tore his ACL during the football season, now is recovered, he's ready to go, and also Sean Green, who's committed to Dominican, a Division II university, to play baseball as the backstop/utility man for Gateway. But with Coach Pietroforte, definitely somebody to watch for the Gators this year. You know, just, again, a very well-built, well-structured team. They had an unfortunate first-round loss to Pennsville last year, but they're looking to get over that hump and get going again.
And, I mean, these two teams, as you mentioned, the records look far apart, but I think this game will be a lot closer than what it says. Again, Gateway is a team that they're losing these games, but, again, they're a team that competes game in and game out against some of these Group 1 schools, and then Pittman is a team that obviously had the 20 wins last year, went to the semifinals of the Group 1 tournament. So, I mean, if Gateway brings their A game, they can compete against this Pittman Panthers team, and that one should be a fun one to watch, and this doubleheader on the 25th.
Absolutely. Moving into the final week of April, we will cover the Williamstown Braves and the Washington Township Minutemen. Seeing the Minutemen on April 28th over at the nice Township facility. 15-15 last year, 6-4 in the Tri-County Royal. They've had some great players over the years, and right now they lost a lot of seniors last year, which is why I think this will be a good matchup with Williamstown. Both teams in a tough division, kind of treading their own waters right now and kind of forging their own path in a different way. I'm excited to see how it works out. Quentin Myers was a good two-way guy. Not a good two-way guy, but a good pitcher for them with a sub-3 ERA. Washington Township and Williamstown, like we said, Tri-County Royal, never easy to compete there, but they'll be willing to do it again this year.
And again, when we talk about Williamstown, they're a team, the only team on this list that missed the playoffs. They're going to be looking to try and really get things going, and this will be later in their season, in the middle of April, not total time if you're out of a losing record to hit the panic button, but a time where a game like this could be important. In a Township team last year that went 500, they lost a lot of seniors. The big question for me with that team is what younger guys are going to step up, and right now the one that looks to be The forefront, or the front runner, excuse me, is Quentin Myers, who had a sub-3 ERA, as you mentioned, only 7 earned runs. The walks can be a bit of an issue there. He had 13 walks and only 21 innings pitched. We'll have to see how that plays out. But overall, this game should be a good one between a couple schools that have a bit of a rivalry with one another.
Absolutely. Now down to our final 2 games of the month of April. It is the Morristown Quakers and the Pennsauken Indians, 2 teams that we have not seen before on DWB Baseball. Morristown, probably one of the more underrated teams. Again, they're a team like Seneca, where they will not have the most impressive record. They were 12-10 last year. They were right around 500 at 14-14 in 2023. But what division are they in? They're in the Olympic Patriot, which has that really tough Cherry Hill West team along with Shawnee. They have Chase Kroberger, who I believe is an Alabama recruit, along with some other Division I talent. Last year they had Lynch, who's now dominating really well over at UNC. He's had some good ACC time in his freshman year. But Pennsauken is a team that's willing to punch up in this situation. They went 2-22 in 21 and 22 combined, and then they held around 500 2 years ago, and now they're 12-8. Rolando Gartier is a great head coach. He is resilient. He doesn't care if the team wins 20 games or 0 games. He's going to fight the same way. And they have Kelvin Batista, who, really stepped up last year. Decent amount of homers for Ramphis Bonilla, who's now over at Rutgers Camden. Again, hitter-friendly park. A team that is willing to play Goliath as a little David, and now they're going to be ready to go here in this second to last game of April.
And I mean, you mentioned Batista, the real standout player for this Pennsauken team on both sides of the ball, whether on the pitcher's mound or in the batter's box. A .333 batting average and 51 at bats, and just over a 1 ERA, a 1.04 ERA, only had 5 earned runs and about 30-plus innings pitched. He's a guy that, again, if you need him to do it on the mound, he can do it on the mound, and he can also do it in the batter's box. And again, 7-1 in the BCSL Patriot Division. They had a lot of success in their division. We're going to have to see if they can have success out of their division against Morristown.
And they shared a division crown with Bordentown, co-winning that division for the first time in 15 years. Our last game of April is going to be another Tri-County matchup. It's going to be the GCIT Cheetahs and the Highland Tartans. Shout out Colin Morris. He couldn't be here tonight. Highland at 11-14. DJ Gore, their head coach, reached 300 wins this past year. Again, another old school coach. Doesn't care where your natural position is. He's going to pencil you in where the team needs you. They have a lot of great talent, including Ian Robeson and Nate Doherty. They also have Luis Celis Rodriguez, the right-hander, who has a lot of good breaking stuff. I believe he's entering his senior year. The thing about Highland is that actually they lost their shortstop in a transfer, Cade Schofield. He's now over at Audubon, but he did well for them as a freshman. And I think that Highland is going to be one of those teams that, again, in a tough division like the Liberty, with Overbrook and Delsey being in there. I'm sorry, not Overbrook, but Delsey being in that division as well, makes it a difficult spot, and it's where their record might not reflect how they are as a team.
Yeah, Highland finishing just under the 500 mark by a couple games. And, I mean, you want to talk about Robeson and Doherty. Robeson, as a sophomore last year, a .371 batting average, over 400 in the slugging department in 62 at-bats, and Doherty with a sub-2 ERA, 31 strikeouts and 37 innings pitched. The talent is there, and those guys were sophomores last year. This is a young team that's looking to compete, and this game is really interesting to me at the end of April because GCIT, as we talked about before, a very young team with a lot of sophomores on their roster. So we're going to have to see which program had the better player development, which team has the wheels rolling a little bit earlier than the other. That one should be a good one towards the end of April.
And at this point in the season, when you're getting into late April, you're thinking about what team, where these teams are. Both of these teams could have taken huge steps forward by this point in the season or huge steps back, or they could be around the same. We don't know, and we'll just have to find out on April 30th. Let's take a look at that April calendar before we go to a quick break. Got a very busy month in April. We've got a handful of double headers with Cinnaminson and Sterling versus Pennsville and Haddon Heights on April 12th. Not only that, we've got the two-step between Burlington Township and Cherokee and Gateway and Pittman on that last Friday, and then a lot of really underrated talent towards the end of April and all throughout the month. I'm very proud of that schedule, and we're going to reveal the month of May for the next 3, looks like maybe 15-ish games to get out to the regular season on May 23rd after this break. We are here. We have wrapped up the month of April, and now we have, it looks like, about 15 games left in our regular season conquest. I'm Dan Wilkins with Jake Clark. We've been having a blast tonight. Just want to give a shout out to David Cohen, who's been doing our timing, even though I've been running over the time limit for every single entry today. Vincent Vogt, who's doing the production, making sure that everything gets brought to you cleanly, and Damian Waiters behind the camera. We have an excellent crew here at DWB, and hopefully you'll be seeing a lot of us, not just myself, but everybody else here behind the scenes in the baseball season in 2025. For our first game of May, we travel down to Atlantic County. When I said we cover 9 counties this year, I wasn't kidding. And actually, this is our only Atlantic County game because it's going to be the Vineland Fighting Clan and the Absegami Braves. I tell you, the amount of Absegami players who have been DMing me, do we have a game this year? Because by my mistake, I backed out last year of the game that we were supposed to do with them, and now we have one. Absegami lost Matt Johansson last year. He's over at Penn State Harrisburg, but they've still got a great right-hander in Mike Harless, not to mention Adrian Rosario. You know, it's a good combination that they have over there, and I like what Junior Mejia does. These guys stay very consistent. They're 12-9. They're in the Cape Atlantic National, which is not an easy division. It's not the American, but it's one step below, and it's right up there with them. So I think that Absegami and Vineland, it's going to be a good matchup, you know, seeing kind of the teams that finish near the bottom of the top division and the top of the second division clash. It'll be very good to see them.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, Absegami, they were a first-round exit last year. So was Vineland, and both these teams, now we're starting to creep into May. Now we're starting to look at playoff implications, and we're going to have to see if these guys are getting ready to go and geared up for the postseason, or if they need to win a couple more games. And this is a game where it's a Cape Atlantic matchup, as you mentioned, the team from the top division and the team from the bottom division. And you got to feel for Absegami. They're coming in with a little bit of an edge, saying, yeah, we might be in the lower division, but we're going to stick it to Vineland to prove that we could play with the big dogs too. And I think that, you know, as you mentioned, Rosario, a 352 batting average last year as a sophomore and 54 at bats. And then on the mound, a 4.34 ERA, showing you he can do a little bit of both. But again, Absegami and Vineland, this game, now we're creeping into May. Playoff implications are definitely going to be on the minds of these two teams.
Absolutely. And with Absegami, you know, again, they're a team that plays at a hitter-friendly park and finds a way to win no matter what. But you're right about the fact that we're starting off May here, and you do have to start thinking about when these games are being played. When we talk about early April games, not much is going to change from now until then. But by May, you don't know. Injuries could pile up. Team rifts could pop up. You don't know what could happen. And there's a lot of things that can change. These two teams could be incredible, or they could be in the middle of the road, or they could be worse. You don't know. But that's just what the point of baseball is that you really do never know. We do have another Olympic matchup coming up on, I believe this is a Monday, the first Monday in May, May 5th. It's going to be the Bishop Eustace Crusaders and the Cherry Hill West Lions, two teams that we've seen before, so we'll keep it brief. But this is going to be a very good matchup between two very experienced teams. And by this point, the Diamond Classic will have started, so you do have to consider the weight that those tournaments are going to have. Diamond Classic first round this year is going to be May 1st. But Bishop Eustace and Cherry Hill West had an amazing game last year between these two. And again, the non-public and the publics in the Olympics, they always love going at each other. And both teams lost their best pitcher. Why am I blanking on his name? From Rutgers. And then also Cherry Hill West with Ryder Garino. They lost their best pitcher, went to a Power 5 conference, and now these two are going to have to pick up the pieces and figure out where they are.
I believe Landon Mack is the guy that you're thinking of that's at Rutgers.
I said him earlier. I just couldn't think of it.
But, he was a tremendous player last year, somebody that's gone against them. Rutgers has a very good, hard-throwing right-hander. But, again, these two teams, both 20-plus win teams. But, again, the big question that I have for Cherry Hill West is you win the Diamond Classic. Now, how are you going to respond with that target on your back? And last year we saw them not respond as they were knocked out in the semifinal round of Group 3, whereas Bishop Eustace competed a little bit more in the non-public side of things. They lost to Gloucester Catholic. And then the big question I have for Bishop Eustace is, can they top Gloucester Catholic? That seems to be the hurdle that all these non-public schools, especially in the non-public B bracket in South Jersey, they have to get over. That's the question for them this year is, can they beat the Rams? Can they make that next step? And can they go and try and win the entire non-public B bracket?
Non-publics, it's Gloucester Catholic versus the world, I'll tell you that. Now, from the backyard of Cherry Hill West, we'll be traveling an hour and a half up the New Jersey Turnpike up to, I believe it's Somerset County. We'll be seeing the Rutgers Prep Argonauts and the Bridgewater Raritan Panthers over on May 6th. Now, we saw Bridgewater Raritan in our first game last year. They played Rancocas Valley, and they play RV again at RV in early April. Now, we couldn't cover that game due to a prior conflict, but Bridgewater Raritan is one of the best teams that I've ever seen. Now, they lost a lot of seniors, but they went 30-3. They won 4 championships. They won their group, they won their section, they won their conference tournament, and I believe they won another one as well. But Max Newell is actually a South Jersey kind of quasi-coach, if you will. He's from Delran, which is why he schedules RV. He has Clearview on his books this year, Lawrence, and he's also playing Egg Harbor Township and Cherokee again. This is a team that knows what they're doing. They have Kellen Comline, who's coming back. They had a couple of guys go Division I. This is a team that, like I said, they know what they're doing. They probably, if you put anybody in Group 4 against them last year, they would have won. Didn't matter that Eastern was there. Didn't matter who was there. The central winner, Bridgewater Raritan, was not losing that state title last year. Not sure if they lost Devin Goldberg, to be honest. I'm not too fresh on that side of the state. But for the game that we're seeing them for this year, I'm very excited to see them play the Argonauts.
And these seem to be two teams that on paper are going in different directions. You talk about a team that won 30 games last year, a 30-3 record. They were the Group 4 state champs, but they lost a lot of seniors. So now the question is, who's going to step up? One of those guys that I think can step up is Kellen Comline, who's entering his junior year. Last year as a sophomore, hit .292 and 72 at-bats and had a sub-1 ERA and 42 2/3 innings pitched. He's a guy that they're going to look to that has that championship experience that the coaches can lean on. But for the Argonauts, they finished under 500 last year as a prep school, and they were 3-7 in their division. But this year they have a lot of juniors and sophomores, guys that probably got some varsity experience last year and took their lumps. Now they're looking to compete a little bit. So you're looking at an Argonauts team that looks like it's going to be on its way up, and potentially a Bridgewater Raritan team that, if they don't have a lot of young players fill those holes, could be on the way down. And in a matchup in May, you're going to know where those roles are for both of these two teams, but we can only speculate here in the middle of March about where they're going to be.
Moving on to the next page on our books here, we've got another Tri-County Classic matchup. It'll be the second between these two this year, the Pittman Panthers and the Pennsville Eagles. We were originally going to cover their first game over in April, but we decided to push it back to their second meeting at Pennsville on May the 7th. Again, two teams that were tied for the Tri-County Classic division last year at 7-1. I would imagine that one loss was them losing to each other, if I had to guess. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but again, two very strong teams. Both lost in key spots in South Jersey Group 1, but again, two teams that are relatively young. Pittman did lose a lot of guys, though. They lost Steven Devaney, who's over at Immaculata. Connor Sharkey, who stole 100 bases, had 100 hits, and also scored 100 runs. That's crazy. And then Steven Devaney, also 100 strikeouts and 100 hits. He reached that mark as a junior. They're going to pick up the pieces. You know, they still have Aiden Stranahan, the Camden County College commit, Jackson Austin, who's committed to Salem, Hudson Rue, who's committed to, I believe, Messiah University. I apologize, Tim, if you're watching. He's Harper Driving School, who sponsors us. But again, still very strong, these two teams, and I think that no matter where you put them, early April, early May, late May, this is going to be a juggernaut matchup no matter what.
And if this is the second time that these two teams are meeting one another, they're in the same division. They know how they're going to play. And the second time you're meeting them this season, you already saw them once before. So you have a bit of a game plan going into this one, and that should provide some strategy for both of these teams. You might see a weird lineup. You might see a different starting pitcher, but that could be because the coach knows something that we as the broadcasters don't from that first meeting, and this one should be a good game. Both teams had 15-plus wins last year. As we mentioned, Pennsville, a very young team. We're going to have to see how they shake out and how those young pieces will be by about early May.
Absolutely, and like we said, around this time of the year, it means everything. You know, what the coaches know, that's going to be something that they'll absolutely laser in on, and especially if a division championship is on the line. Moving over a little bit further away from Pennsville, we'll be back at Cumberland for our third game there on May 8th between the Delsea Crusaders and the Cumberland Colts. And again, Delsea 27-4 last year. This is our first time seeing Delsea after they lost Joe Smith. He went over to Mainland to coach there, and we'll be talking about them in a second. But Vincent Landino is there to carry over the torch. They have Austin Buchanan, who is also committed to LaSalle. I'm excited for what they have. They have Max Van Auken. They lost George Starr last year. And Delsea still retaining a decent amount of their core. Not all of it, but not none of it. 27-4 last year, Group 3 South champs. They played a juggernaut of a schedule. They made it to I believe they made it to the finals. They might have lost in the Group 3 semis, but either way, this is a game that might be Cumberland trying to be the underdog here because the last time they played, Delsea won 18-3. So we'll see what happens. You know, this is one of those let's see what happens kind of games. You know, you don't know what's going to happen based off of prior events, but Delsea certainly seems to be the favorite in this matchup considering their prior record.
Yeah, and I mean, they're looking to defend their title in Group 3, and when you look at the results from last year, Delsea wins Group 3, has 25-plus wins on the year. Cumberland last year finished 9-14 and was a first-round exit in Group 3 South. So they're two teams that were in different directions last year, but we'll have to see how Cumberland starts to maybe close the gap this year against Delsea. And as you mentioned, a couple key losses for Delsea in this offseason. We're going to have to see how things shake out by around early May. But again, we can only speculate. It's around early to mid-March, and there's a lot of things that could change and shake up by the time these two meet.
Yeah, Delsea's losses could outweigh Cumberland's gains. We don't know, and that could even things out a little bit. Speaking of Joe Smith and Mainland, let's talk about their appearance this year on DWB. They'll be playing the Kingsway Dragons on May 9th. That is going to be a game I am incredibly excited for. The last time these two played, it was at Mainland, 1-0 final. There was an RBI by Cohen Cook in the third inning, and they never looked back. These are, again, juggernauts. 20-6, 17-9. Both of these teams did very well in their respective divisions. Again, Kingsway 6-4 in the Tri-County Royal, the tough division that it is, and then Mainland 10-2 in the top tier of the Cape Atlantic over in the American division. Now, Mainland did lose a lot of seniors. They lost Cohen Cook. They lost pretty much everybody that got valuable playing time, but they still have some left. They have Jake Blum, who's going to be somebody to watch. But I think by this point in the season, we could see a lot of playoff berths on the line. Could see some Diamond Classic experience behind them. This is not your standard first Saturday in April. Let's test things out. This is a juggernaut matchup at a crucial juncture in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talk about Blum, a .333 batting average last year, a .439 slugging percentage in 57 at-bats, had 19 hits, 16 RBIs, and 7 stolen bases for the Mainland Mustangs. And again, Kingsway is a team that had 17 wins last year, Both these teams were quarterfinal losses in their respective groups. They're going to be looking at this game as a way to maybe get a big win, not only for morale victory, but for power points as well. These teams are probably going to be really good when they face off in early May, and this one should be one that you have circled on your calendar.
Absolutely. We'll have it circled on ours as well. Let's talk about this second Saturday in May. We'll be covering back home at the Alma Mater. It'll be the Delran Bears and the Audubon Green Wave. It'll be a 10 a.m. start. This is the first time in a while these two have played each other, but I couldn't find a home game for Delran to circle on my schedule, so we decided to just do it here instead. Delran's got a lot of underrated talent. They've got Jeff Kennard, the first baseman for them, who had some pop last year, hit a couple homers. They've got some, underrated talent in that BCSL division that has NBC, Cinnaminson, and Burlington Township. Kind of gets lost in the shuffle sometimes. But, again, Delran is punching up a little bit here despite being a Group 2, Audubon being the Group 1 contender that they are. Delran, did pretty well for themselves. They've been around 500 the last couple of years, but they've been consistent, and they're making small steps forward. So I think that this will be a good matchup late in the season, especially for Audubon, who's still looking to stay fresh in early May.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Audubon, as we talked about earlier, baseball school, always competing in Group 1. They're fantastic in the Colonial Conference. The many times I've had to go up against them were not fun for the Sterling side of things. But for Delran, they were 12-12 last year, but winless in the BCSL Liberty. That's something that they got to look to change this year. And I mean, Audubon, an out-of-division opponent, but a very good school. Maybe not a lot of power points considering they're Group 1, but one of the best Group 1 schools, and showing that you can compete with a team like Audubon and maybe even beat them is something to not hang your hat on.
Yeah, I mean, it's Group 2, so it's better than nothing. That's how we see it. But Rich Horan, again, one of 5 head coaches in South Jersey to have 600 career wins or more, has had only one under 500 season in his career, 2005, and that was in the middle of it. He was an assistant at GC, came over, won some state titles, and then had one bad year, and he's hasn't looked back since then. Moving into the second to last week of the season, we've got ourselves a very good matchup between the BCSL and the Olympic. It's the Northern Burlington Greyhounds and the Lenape Indians. I really like this matchup for Northern Burlington. As you said about Burlington, I'm not sure if it was Burlington Township, it might have been Deptford. You said go all in, and that's what Northern Burlington is doing. They have the majority of their seniors returning. They have Cole Marchetti, who's a great third baseman. They really shocked us last year. They had a big upset in the first round of the Diamond Classic versus Cherokee, and they just never looked back. They lost in the quarterfinals of Group 3 Central, but I think that they are a team that is going to be underrated because they had that one run in the Diamond Classic. I just see the way that they play is so fluid. It's incredible how everything just bounces off of each other. The pitcher has a scoreless inning, and then the hitters respond with a couple runs. It all flows together so well, which is something that you don't see that often in baseball, a team that flows together well. Sometimes it's a little bit jagged, but Lenape, as we talked about earlier, a team that lost a decent amount of guys, but they I think they still have Grant Hunter. I'm not sure if he left, but no, he left. But he's going to be over at Virginia Tech. So the way I see it, this is going to be a very good matchup, and Northern Burlington's going to have a lot to prove.
And I mean, you mentioned Marchetti, who's one of the best players for this Greyhounds team. Hit 400 as a sophomore last year, 427 slugging percentage in 75 at-bats. And then on the mound for Northern Burlington, a 1.81 ERA with 34 strikeouts in 19 and a third innings pitched. He's a guy that's a true standout player for them. And in a game like this in late May, where it really starts to matter now, trying to pile up as many wins as you can before the playoffs, Lenape's a good team, but as you mentioned, they lost a lot of seniors. This could be Northern Burlington's game for the taking if they can play the brand of baseball that they've had in the past.
Absolutely. We've got our final 8 games remaining here in our South Jersey baseball conquest. We're calling it Swing into Spring. Our first game of those final 8 is going to be a familiar friend. It's going to be the Clearview Pioneers and the Washington Township Minutemen over at Clearview. Another matchup in the Tri-County Royal. I am still very excited about these two teams, both Group 4 South finalists last year. And Clearview, again, as the 6th seed, made a big run. They beat Highland, but then they also had a tough matchup that they won as well before losing in the semifinals. Nick Core is in his second year coaching this team after Anthony Reagan left. They kept a couple of their brought most of their seniors back, but I like, again, how they play. It's a unique venue. It's a hitter-friendly park. They just find ways to win. It's a very resilient team. They all kind of, mold off of each other, and they really work together well. I like how Chris Wolf plays. AJ Palumbo's out, but he left a lasting impact on that crew, and Clearview's going to, hopefully at this point, make another good run again.
And another guy for Clearview is Tyler Dell, who had a 244 batting average last year, 410 slugging percentage, and also on the mound, a sub-3 ERA, 46 strikeouts in 33 innings pitched. And again, this Washington Township team, we had the question marks, and we still have them right now, but by the 14th of May, we're going to know what they're all about, and we're going to know if this is going to be a great game against a good Clearview team or if they're struggling to fill the holes that the seniors left them. And so this one is still, again, a question mark for us here in March, but as the season goes on, we're going to see how the Minutemen handle their business this year, and this one could end up being a really, really good game for Group 4 South.
Absolutely, and staying in that big school kind of Group 4 area, it is the Camden Catholic Irish and the Rancocas Valley Red Devils. We have not really seen much of Rancocas Valley this year, and this will be our first time seeing the Red Devils. Dan Haverstick is a great head coach. They have, first of all, a former major leaguer in the pitching coach side with Jeff Singer. He used to pitch for the Phillies and had a short stint with them. But they've got Jake Bartletta, who you might know him as a Rowan commit. And he's somebody that has been extremely viable for them in the past couple of seasons. Not only that, but they've got Vevajaya behind the dish for the Red Devils. He is somebody who's going to be leading the way with the backstop. They lost a key pitcher in Matt Hewitt, who's at my college now, RCSJ, but they need this kind of boost. They lost to, I believe it was ACIT in the first round of last year's Group 4 playoffs. It was the first time in my years of covering this sport that I had ever seen a number one seed lose. It hurts. It stings. I get it. But these guys now have that fire sparked. Last year ended in the way that nobody wanted it to. Let's make sure that never happens again. Let's win so much that we don't have to worry about it ever again. And Dan Haverstick, again, is a fiery coach. He's going to make sure that happens. And I think Rancocas Valley is going to go far and hopefully avoid the same mistakes that they did last year.
And you mentioned Barletta, the Rowan commit, a 471 batting average last year. He's going to be the guy leading the charge, saying we got to go compete game in and game out. Doesn't matter the opponent, whether they're better than us, worse than us. We can't fall into a trap game. We can go beat teams that are better than us. And again, 48 hits last year. And the thing that really stood out to me, 102 at-bats. Hitting triple digits in the at-bat category is really impressive. 48 hits, almost hit the half-a-century mark, 18 RBIs and 33 singles, 8 doubles. He's a fantastic player. He's going to really be pushing the Red Devils this year to try and win game in and game out.
And the unfortunate thing about NJ.com's stat keeping is that it doesn't really show what I'm about to say, but the games that we covered for RV last year were the Diamond Classic quarterfinal versus Gloucester Catholic. And then, of course, we talk about the the Group 4 first round versus ACIT. That ACIT game, they committed 10 errors. You can't do that. Their first round, their quarterfinal round Diamond Classic game versus Gloucester Catholic, I don't know how many they committed, but I knew they committed errors late. They had a drop in right field that pretty much tied the game, and then the game won on a walk-off error at second base. Their defense has got to be bulked up a little bit, and I imagine that Haverstick and those guys are working on that right now in their practices before these games start. They're starting off their season early on March 21st. I think that it's going to be a good decision for them to get rolling early and kind of roll with the punches, because it's going to take them a little while to kind of readjust, and if their defense can lock down, they're going to win a lot more games. Moving over to a Saturday doubleheader on our last Saturday of the season. We've got a two-step again in North and South Jersey, maybe Central Jersey if you want to be specific, but it's the Ewing Blue Devils and the Spotswood Chargers. I've been wanting to go out to a Spotswood game for a while now. I covered them as a play-by-play commentator twice when they played Audubon in the Coaches versus Cancer. They played Highland last year. They won that game, I think it was 3-2. And then they lost to Audubon 2-1 2 years ago down in Atlantic County. But back at home, Spotswood is a team that has a lot of good history. They've got the Comiskey brothers. Casey graduated 2 years ago, and Carter, who is a senior this year, is going to follow in his brother's footsteps by going to Seton Hall. So Ewing, in the Colonial Valley Conference, they'll be traveling a little bit, but they still have Joey Andrus, who's going to be coming back for his senior year, and both teams bringing back the majority of their core. I think that despite Spotswood tying 2 games and only losing 4, I think it will level out to be a good matchup.
And I mean, the thing that really stands out to me about Spotswood is 19 wins in the regular season, losing in the first round of Group 2 Central. That's just something that you had a successful regular season, but it didn't carry over into the postseason. And again, this is a team that it's not in South Jersey. I'm not super familiar with, but I mean, they've got the talent, as you mentioned, the 2 brothers. The one is still there entering his senior year. They're going to be a good team. It's just, can they get that extra push, that extra jolt in the postseason when it matters the most?
Absolutely. And we'll be hopping in that DWB Mobile to hop down to Gloucester County for our second game of this two-step. It's going to be PVI and Gloucester Catholic at 7 o'clock down at the Belmar Rec Center. Now, I believe I did that graphic wrong on the bottom of your screen. I believe Gloucester Catholic is the home team for that game, so the colors got a little bit messed up. But still, this is a classic parochial matchup. This is the Red Sox versus Yankees of South Jersey. 2 teams that have a lot of history. They've won a lot of championships. Some have won them more recently than others, but it still is an incredible matchup between these two. And I think with PVI destined to make big steps forward this year and Gloucester Catholic kind of being who they are as a year-in, year-out contender, I think it's going to be a great matchup and under the lights create some nice scenes.
And I mean, we talked about Paul VI finishing under 500. To me, that was a bit surprising because they are such a talented team and they have a lot of young talent. Mason Myers was the guy we talked about earlier. But Gloucester Catholic, again, a powerhouse program year in and year out. They also have young talent. A guy that we didn't mention earlier is Guy Lynham, who had 393 last year, had 31 RBIs. He's a fantastic player. I believe he's committed to Auburn. They have guys that just D1 talent. Year in and year out, they're just producing D1 products, and I think that this matchup is going to be good. While Gloucester Catholic looks like the heavy favorite, by, again, mid-May, we're going to know if Paul VI is legit or not, and I think that they will be.
Absolutely, and again, GC is one of those teams that is probably one of the only teams in the state that doesn't have a lot of two-way guys. You're not going to see Jason Bogart pitch. You're not going to see Noah Danza pitch. It's just how it is. And Gloucester Catholic is such a deep program with a lot of history. Like we said, 21 state titles, the most of anybody in the state. They are never a team to be slept on, and I don't think that they ever have produced a resume to be slept on. Down to the Final Four, into the final week. Yes, I thank you very much for sticking with us. Like I said, I've gone over my time limit in every single one tonight, but we will keep it short and sweet. For the last week, it is Eastern and Cherokee. I really wanted to see Eastern earlier this year, just didn't work out in the schedule, but Rob Christ is one of those coaches that, again, very old school, very kind of a very fiery head coach, but guess what? I mean, you don't have to like what he does, but he wins games. These guys went 25-7 last year. If Bridgewater Raritan was not in the Group 4 state final, these guys would have won. But because you're facing a team that won 30 games, I don't think I've ever heard of a team that won 30 games in a season before. But these guys have Logan Dawson, by the way, guy that I went to elementary school with before he moved to Eastern. He's committed to Boston College. He's a 3-sport athlete, one of the leading scorers in basketball, the quarterback in football, and one of the stars of the baseball team. They lost Sam Winsett last year, who's now a shortstop over at Coastal Carolina. And again, Logan Dawson is a Group 4 talent, a two-way talent. These guys, they lost a couple of seniors, including Spencer Haldeman, the first baseman. These guys have a lot of talent, and Eastern, I don't think they will deviate too far from their 25 wins last year.
And I mean, as a former Sterling player, we schedule Eastern every single year, and they are just as good as the record shows that they are. They are a fantastic program from top to bottom, and not only do they have the strength, the speed, the physical attributes, but mentally they're one of the teams that really plays the game and breaks it down almost to a science. We're seeing things like fake bunt steals, suicide squeezes in games. They're fantastic at just doing the little things right. And I mean, when you talk about Logan Dawson, a true two-way player, batted over 300 last year and had a sub-2 ERA with 75 strikeouts in a single season. Fantastic on the mound. He's a guy that is just a fantastic talent for the Vikings.
He is one of the few that I could say could pitch or hit at Boston College. I honestly don't know what he's going to do, but I know he's going to be great. Third to last game, Delsey and Kingsway, May 21st on that last Wednesday of the regular season. Again, another juggernaut matchup. When we see Kingsway, it's not versus a joke of a team. I mean, Again, we're seeing them versus Delsey. We're seeing them versus Bishop Eustace. We're seeing them versus Mainland. Kingsway is battle-tested. Bill Alvaro Jr. likes it that way. Bill Alvaro Sr., his dad, being one of the best head coaches in South Jersey in a long time, of a generation. Again, we mentioned it in the Greg Himes interview, just talking about who are you inspired by, and Bill Alvaro Sr. is a name that comes up so much. Well, guess what? His son is still leading the way. Still a lot of talent. We talk about Logan Taylor a little bit. Had a .430 slugging percentage and nearly 80 at-bats last year with the Dragons. But again, you still have Delsey 27-4, won a sectional title. Kingsway definitely had their road cut shorter than they wanted to, and if they could, I think that they could have made the South Jersey Group 4 final last year, and who knows, they could be back at it again.
And we talked about Buchanan, but we didn't really dive into his stats from last season. He's entering his senior year. Last year, hit for .430 in the batting average, a .645 slugging percentage, and 93 at-bats. Had 40 hits and 33 RBIs. Did about everything that he was asked to do for the Crusaders at the dish last year. A fantastic player, and again, a team that lost a lot of seniors, but they have some guys coming back. He's one of them, and they're going to be looking to compete in Group 3 yet again.
Our second to last game is going to be another one at my alma mater. It is our fourth and final game with Audubon this year. I know Audubon has been pestering me a little bit that they want more games. Well, guess what? This schedule is really good, and I can't afford to lose a lot of these games. It's Gloucester and Audubon. Again, Group 1 sectional titles from last year could mean a lot for Audubon in terms of power points, beating a Group 2 if they do it. Audubon 19-10 last year, lost in the semifinals to Woodstown, who eventually lost to Gloucester. Kind of that domino effect. It definitely changes things up a little bit. We should talk about Tyler Wiltsey a little bit, though. 391 average last year. Hit a game-winning home run versus Camden Academy in the first round of the playoffs. He's got some sneaky pop in that bat. The Audubon field doesn't really help his case as a righty, but once he eventually goes over to New Brunswick, it'll certainly help. I think that Gloucester and Audubon, it's a good rivalry across all sports, whether it's football, basketball, soccer, baseball. It always seems to produce some fireworks, and it's always really good. Audubon won 9-4 in their last matchup. But again, a team that is coming off of the euphoria of a sectional title versus a team that has been yearning for one for 8 years, since 2017. These guys both won it bad for their own brackets, and we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned Wiltsey. You talk about the pop. Had 7 triples, so he's not getting the long ball, but showing off the speed and getting the 3-baggers. And I think that just this game, again, the Group 1 title winners from last year, they're not Group 1 anymore, but they have the belt still, and that they'll always have their names etched in history against a team in Audubon that is consistently competing in Group 1, consistently making deep runs in the playoffs, and one of the better small schools in South Jersey. That one should be a great game towards the end of May.
And the final game of the 2025 regular season, I felt some groans in this room dive as we got into the hour-and-a-half mark of this production. But we're going to see some more familiar friends. It is the St. Augustine Hermits and the Clearview Pioneers. This will be our first and only time seeing St. Augustine in the regular season, unless we get scheduled for a Diamond Classic game. I should make the note that all of these games are subject to change. Things happen. Rainouts. We know that from last year. The entire first week of the season got shelved. I don't know what Mother Nature has in plan. I think Mother Nature is a Dan Wilkins Broadcasting fan and will find a way to get some of these games at better weather. But either way, St. Augustine is one of my favorite middle infield combos in South Jersey. I think one step above Harvey and DeJoseph is going to be Brady Jackson and Joe Arace. I think it's Arace or Arachi. He's committed to Rutgers. And then Brady Jackson as a junior, he's committed to Old Dominion. This is a team, again, with great head coaching. They've got Mike Ney over there. Jackson hitting just under 300 as a sophomore last year. And both teams doing well for themselves in their own bracket. St. Augustine won the non-public A title, and Clearview, as we've mentioned, like a broken record, found ways to get through into the semifinal round of Group 3 in South Jersey, rather in Group 4. So the way that I see it is that this is a team that, as we close out the regular season, is going to be that chapter turn for both of these teams. Is St. Augustine going to be able to stay dominant, and is Clearview going to be able to keep up the success from last year? I don't know. These two teams could be in completely different stadiums by the end of the 2025 season. They could be in completely different predicaments. I don't know, but right now on paper, it's looking like a very good matchup.
Yeah, absolutely. You got the non-public A champs going up against the team that was one of the best in Group 4 South, losing in the semifinals. But the eye-popping stat for me here with Brady Jackson, 21 stolen bases, getting over the 20 stolen bases mark in a season. Very impressive, and he did it as a sophomore, showing off the wheels and the smarts there to know when to go and when to not, and showing that 21 stolen bags, 27 hits, 19 RBIs, a .413 slugging percentage, and 92 at-bats. The guy's a very talented player and definitely one to highlight and keep your eye on.
Well, I can't believe it, but that is the final page. First of all, big thanks to Jake for making all these notes. Said it with all week took you to do this?
It did take me a little bit longer than I thought it would, but it was definitely better to come prepared than just to try and wing it, that's for sure.
Exactly. I mean, I don't think I would have done as well without it. I mean, I do my respective research, but this guy's above and beyond. He does great with Rowan and Neil Hartman over there, formerly of the Sports Cam program. But, again, 42 games, 9 counties. I mean, this has taken me months to get done. We scheduled our first baseball game of the season in October, and we scheduled our most recent one last week. It's hours of phone calls, hours worth of emails. It's a lot to get this done, and baseball is my favorite time of the year, and I think it might be yours as well. I wish everyone the best of luck, no matter if you got 1 game or 4 games. Even if we don't see you at all this year, wish all of our baseball players and all of our big baseball friends the best of luck. And Millville and Pittman, you're next. 10 days from now, we'll be seeing them at Alcyon Park before those trees get their green leaves. I'm Dan Wilkins with Jake Clark to my left, David Cohen on our timer, Vincent Vogt on the production, and Damian Waiters behind the camera. These fellas have some pizza in the kitchen and some cookies and chips waiting for them, so I won't hold them any longer. Have a good one, folks, and we'll see you on March 24th for Millville and Pittman.